know what really makes us mad? Is wasting money on CDs with only one or two good songs.
Yeah. Tell them about punk.
What's up, posers, and welcome to Punk Lotto Pod. I'm your co-host, Justin Hensley.
I'm your other co-host, Dylan Hensley.
And this is the show where we choose 1 year at random and select one punk, hardcore, emo, or punk-adjacent album from that year to discuss. This is our first episode post our Halloween Spooktacular, so I hope you enjoyed our spooky season, but now we are back in the swing of things in a more normal format. So today's episode, it was my turn to choose. I got the year 2013, and we'll talk about all of that more. But before we get into that, patreon.com/punklautopod is where you get access to all of our weekly bonus audio. Last week we did a 2-in-1 I'm Listening News of the World, where we talked about the news stories that happened over the last week, what we listened to, and Dylan talked about the new Bruce Springsteen biopic, and I talked about seeing Devo and the B-52s live. So a lot of stuff there on that episode, a lot of content there. So fun little episode.
I failed to mention also, I did go see the Guillermo del Toro Frankenstein movie.
Oh, you actually saw it?
And,
really?
I was dumb and I didn't check the sign, and we parked just past the sign, but it was basically like a permit parking only neighborhood, and it was in the middle of Hollywood, so it was just like frantically trying to find parking before the movie, and so I just like rushed, and like I even thought about it like as we were almost to the walking to the theater. I was like, I bet that's permit parking only. I should go back, but I didn't, and I got a ticket, so I should have gone back. But yeah, the Guillermo Frankenstein movie was pretty good. I thought it was an enjoyable movie. It's kind of funny. It feels like Guillermo del Toro is just doing his versions of the rest of the Mignola universe.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean.
He did the one Hellboy movie, and then he did The Shape of Water with the Abe Sapien actor.
That's true.
Playing the same character, basically, and then he did Frankenstein, and Frankenstein's basically a Mignola character as well.
Well, he really wanted to do a third movie, and they wouldn't let him.
Yeah. So now we need a Guillermo del Toro, like, pulp hero who...
do a Lobster Johnson.
Burns people's faces.
Yeah, like a shadow-type character. Yeah, that could be fun. He'd probably nail that, too. And then he did Pinocchio.
Oh, yeah.
Which feels like the type of monster of the week he might have fought in a Hellboy comic. So. But yes, all of that's on the Patreon at the $1 tier. You can also get access to our $5 tier, where we shout out our producers every single week. So shout out to Dave Brown, my co-host on Bookenders, as well as the writer of the newsletter Oklahoma Lefty. Shout out to Steve Long, host of the podcast Rebel Nerd Radio, and writer of the newsletter The Otter Limits. Shout out to Jason W., writer of the newsletter Songs About Chocolate and Girls. We have a lot of newsletter writers on here. And shout out to Zach in Oregon, who doesn't have a newsletter, but maybe should. Those producers also get access to a once-a-month exclusive bonus audio where we talk about an EP. We currently have a poll up in place right now, so if you want to go vote on that and break the tie, be my guest. Sign up at that $5 tier. And then we have a $10 tier where you get to choose the album that we devote an entire episode to. So we got one of those coming up in the month of November, and yeah, that'll do it. So let's get into it. Like I said at the top, it was my turn to choose from the year 2013, and I'm always nervous about these 2010 episodes because they don't have great numbers for listeners, and the albums themselves, it's interesting. They don't feel nostalgic despite being 12 years old. So, what is going on in 2013?
So, 2013, I definitely remember pretty well. I was out of college. Lots of stuff happening. A lot of little subgenres and categories and types of bands. Pretty notable for being a very big year for the Screamo Black Gaze thing. Primarily Death Heaven's Sunbather. That's the big record, but there's some other stuff in that category. An Autumn for Crippled Children put out a record. Celeste put out a record. They're like the French post-metal, black metal, Screamo-ish band. There's a lot of other pretty notable Screamo post-hardcore stuff. The biggest thing being Touche Amores is Survived By, but some other stuff that I remember from that year being like Lord Snow and Old Grey and State Faults. But a lot of it was just like, it was kind of that next wave of Screamo stuff, and very much reminds me too that this was also that next wave of emo revival stuff. And so like the really notable stuff, it's The World Is, put out whenever, if ever. There's a Front Bottoms record, Tiny Moving Parts record. But also it's kind of like the year where the notable stuff, I remember being like, well, that Crash of Rhinos record is something.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we talked about it as when we were out. We were fully out by this point, right? Like, man, yeah,
pretty much. Because I didn't get into foxing.
No,
by that point I was out. I was not interested in Into It Over It. It was just a funny time period because we went from being like listening to every single thing that came out to like listening to none of it in like the span of a year.
Yeah. Yeah, because I really was trying like everything that came out, and I liked most of everything I heard too. So that was always funny that it was just like the Into It Over It ification of that scene. It's just like, oh, you just snoozed, you just made everything boring. World Is, like all those bands.
So some other big stuff happening that I definitely remember at the time. We had a lot of easy core and a lot more in the defend pop punk kind of style of bands. So there's like a Wonder Years record and a Day to Remember record and The Story So Far. Never really got into that stuff. Like I think I listened to like one Fireworks record.
Yeah, I liked Fireworks, and I saw Wonder Years live a few times during this time period, and I thought they were a fun live band, but I never really cared about their records. Like the only one I really listened to was maybe the Upsides. Maybe the one with like Captain Crunch and Kool-Aid Man on the cover, but not a lot. Those I would have heard more in our friend's car. But this was, that time period where that stuff was everywhere.
Kind of a smaller scene, but I think notable for the time period. We had this sort of soft grunge, I've seen it called. Mm-hmm. It was like the bands that were doing what Basement did. It was basically like emo bands trying to sound like grunge bands. Daylight put out Jar, Citizen put out Youth. Balance and Composure put out a record. Also didn't really get into that stuff either.
No, the only grungy thing I got into was like Violent Soho.
Yeah, which they have a record that year too.
Yeah, they did, which you might have actually put somewhere else, but they also weren't an emo band. They were like a punk band that was doing it. It's like, yeah, it's more like a Pears if Pears tried to do grungy stuff.
There's weirdly a lot of metalcore still.
Never goes away, really, I feel like.
Yeah. Bring Me the Horizon, Trivium, August Burns Red, Asking Alexandria, Misery Signals, Devil Wears Prada. There's an I Wrestled a Bear Once record. A lot of metalcore, a lot of gent, which I didn't even bother to list that stuff.
Yeah, I feel like that's more of a metal genre than a hardcore genre, but yeah.
Kind of comes from metalcore. It was just like, it was the natural progression from deathcore.
Yeah. I mean, you got to fill out these festivals somehow. Because that's what most, like, rock festivals are made up of, those kind of bands these days. Lots of monster logos everywhere.
A scene that I was paying a lot of attention to and was definitely hearing a lot of stuff in this world. I'm kind of just broadly categorizing it as HM2 core, which is very much the Nails style of, like, grind and death metal influenced. It was kind of just a swirl of, like, grind and crust and death wish hardcore. And even like some post-metal sludge. I felt like there was a lot of overlap in those scenes. Nails does put out a record that year, Abandon All Life, which was their last one for a while, I think, if I remember correctly.
Which one?
Abandon All Life by Nails. No, they had one in 2016. Everyone forgets about that one. I don't think anybody cared about that record.
Yeah.
There was an Oathbreaker record, Dead in the Dirt. I definitely listened to that one. I would have heard that All Pigs Must Die record. Definitely saw that Cloud Rat record everywhere. Just a lot of bands still doing the cursed thing. And just that generally sludgy, grindy. This was the kind of bands that prompted me to tweet about the going to shows in like 2012, 2013. You would take this grainy, dark picture of a band playing in a house with like 2 full stacks for no reason at all. I definitely saw Torch Runner like that.
Yeah.
Bands touring with two 8x10s for their bass amp and like $2,000 Varellin custom 200 watt, tube amps, 300 watt tube amps. It's just like overkill. There's a lot of other stuff going on. A lot of post-punk stuff. A lot of surf stuff still going on. The indie surf and like the surf punk stuff like Fiddler. Some Beach Fossils and Waves. And
why was that such a trend? Like that surfy indie stuff.
I don't know who started it.
Do you think it was just them, like musicians from that time period who just really got into the Beach Boys? And they're just like, what if we did the Beach Boys, but indie?
Yeah.
But then didn't do the harmony thing? They all just sang like disaffectedly bored guys.
Yeah. I don't know. There was a shitload of it.
Yeah.
And then the other scene that we were really paying the most attention to, and it's kind of not even like a strong year for it, but there was the Orkcore, Fest Punk, bands that fit in that world. Reviver put out The Beauty Between. Iron Sheik put out The Constant One. Off of Their Heads put out Home. Lemuria put out The Distance Is So Big, which was like slightly better than the record before it, but
these are all weaker albums.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, these bands are still around doing stuff, but these are like their weaker records. Like people don't prefer The Beauty Between over the self-titled Reviver record. People don't usually prefer The Constant One over the, not like this. Same with Lemuria, like two dud records in a row, That Home record Out for Their Heads was like an improvement over In Desolation, but it was like too little too late for me personally.
Yeah, I think some of the stronger records are the Alkaline Trio record, My Shame Is True.
Yeah, that's a fun one.
Very funny that Alkaline Trio have never played Fest.
They would fit in perfectly.
Yeah. The amount of Alkaline Trio shirts and tattoos you see at Fest.
Plus bands that they are friends with play Fest all the time. Get Up Kids, Hot Water Music, people that they like have actual connections to. Lawrence Arms,
Yeah.
It is weird that Alkaline Trio is like the one who's still very active that they can't seem to like catch. I guarantee you they ask. They must just have too much of an asking price.
Yeah.
That they're just like, no, we're not going to pay
Is it enough of a draw for it to be worth us spending the money on it? Yeah.
Yeah.
Radioactivity put out their self-titled record, which is phenomenal. It's definitely one of the best albums of that whole year. There's an Obits record. There's the second Night Marchers record, LA, which is great too, which is John Reese, which I think Obits and Night Marchers both played Fest that year.
Really? I think most of this list played Fest that year.
Yeah.
It'd be easier to point out bands who didn't.
Alkaline Trio.
Yeah, because I think I feel like everyone else would have played. There's a chance Polar Bear Club didn't play, but everybody else did. Yeah, Radioactivity may not have been that year, but they have done it after.
Yeah. But, 2013, there's other stuff we'll talk about. There's other good stuff we'll talk about. But not a very impressive year overall. But probably was one of the last few years where everything was getting called punk still.
Yeah.
As we've noted before on the show, it's right around 2014, 15, 16, where everybody stops using the word punk.
Yeah.
But what did you almost pick?
So I picked out a few things. I did have a hard time trying to narrow it down to what I wanted to talk about. I was going through some of that stuff, and there was interesting things in here that I thought would be worth talking about, but also a lot of stuff that we have talked about recently on the show, or whether or not it was actually a main show, or if it was something we did on a bonus audio. But there were certain things I was just like, that could be good, but I was like, I want to go a little bit different with this one. So I was considering, this one just jumped out at me because it was like on the front page, and I thought, I could do that. Melt Banana's Fetch was released that year, which is like one of the later Melt Banana records. I don't know exactly what number that one is on, but it is one of the ones where I think it was like the last one for a while. They did, Fetch was their last one until 2024's 3+5. So yeah, it was a while between records. And that one looks like even that one had been a few years. Bambi's Dilemma was in 2007, which is, 6 years earlier. So a little bit of a gap there. I really enjoy Melt Banana. I always have. We have only covered one of their hedgehogs. I think I called them porcupines or something when we talked about them last time. But their hedgehogs was what they called their EPs or their singles. And I would like to do an LP by them. But yeah, that one just kind of jumped out at me. I don't know if that's like the one to do. The one to do would probably be one of the 90s records. Like there's a couple good choices actually in the 90s that I think would have made a good option. Really their first 4 records. So I don't know. I was just like, I would like to talk about Melt Banana, but I just ultimately passed on it because, I don't know, just not quite sure if that was the record to do. One that I was actually very strongly considering is Comadre's self-titled record. It was the final Comadre record. It's a phenomenal album, and it's funny that the last record they did is their best record because so much of their earlier stuff is good, but like the production usually was pretty bad, and this was so good. And it was like following up their kind of their little run there of being like this fun little sideshow band at fests. Like there were a couple years in a row where they were playing like these after shows, house shows. I went to 3 of them. I saw them 3 times do that thing. And then I was just like, and I don't know that I've ever actually seen a real official set. I've only seen the after show sets by Comadre. But yeah, that's a fun record. It's a phenomenal record. I really was considering it, but Dylan, you pointed out that we have talked about this one a lot over the years, just in general, which is talking about music in general. And I was like, yeah, you're right. This is one of the ones on that list of artists where we're just like, we have to shut up about them for a couple months before we can pick a record from them, because we just talk about them all the time. So I think that's ultimately why I passed on that one. So the other record that I was like, we haven't done them. This is one of the records to do from them. I was really, really, really considering Radiator Hospital's Something Wild. This is the record that I was introduced to the band by. It came out in the fall, but I don't think I'd heard it until like November. And I remember at the time thinking like, man, I wish I'd heard this earlier because this might be my number 1 album of the year. And I don't think I did. I think it was like the top 3 that year, but I loved that record. It's such a good album. I think it's their tightest. I think it's their best record. The next record would be the other one to do, which has like Cut Your Bangs on it. I think Torch Song is the name of that record. That would be another one to do. But there was a part of me that was just kind of like, I don't know. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to listen to them. I didn't want to research it. Something has happened over the last few years with Radiator Hospital that I have kind of lost some interest in that band, despite being like really into them. And I don't think there's anything like it's the band's fault. I think it's just like my tastes have changed in some ways. And I mean, maybe the fact that like they've released like a lot of stuff since this time period that I don't really like care for or listen to like even more than one time. I mean, they had a ton of stuff before I learned about them too, but those are mostly like singles and EPs. Yeah, they did Play the Songs You Like in 2017, didn't really care for it. Sings Music for Daydreaming in 2019, didn't really care for it. Can't Make Any Promises in 2023, didn't really care for it. And then like, yeah, everything they've done in between there, like other EPs and other like, you know, splits and singles and stuff. Just, I don't know. I fell out of this on this band, and I don't have a legitimate reason why, other than I just thought the last few things they did were underwhelming. And that was kind of my feeling on 2013 in general. Like I got that year because we were due to do another 2010s album. And so I was like looking at the year, and I was just like, I think this is one of those records where, yes, those are 12-year-old albums, but they still feel too new to me. I don't know how to describe that sensation. I mean, it's just because I was already an adult working a full-time job and, you know, had been for a number of years, I guess. And so there's that youthfulness isn't quite there, but I don't know. I can't explain why I was just so meh on this year in general.
I think not a lot of it really had mileage. Like, I think when I look back at this year, I can definitely muster up a lot of nostalgia. I can see a lot of these records, and I think my reaction to a lot of them is just, I loved that then, but that was then. Like, I kind of don't want to listen to it now. There's stuff that I think still holds up, and like I can definitely come back to. And there's definitely stuff that I maybe have not wanted to listen to a ton in the intervening years, but like if we came back to it to do it on this show, I would enjoy it. But overall, there's just a lot of stuff that I'm just like, whatever. That was fine for the moment. A lot of space filling.
You know what I really thought? You know what I would have wanted to do more than anything? But I was just like, I don't know, that's too weird of an idea. in 2013, Old Flings released like 4 splits that year, and like some singles too. Like this was the year after. Like it wasn't even the year after. It was like 2 years after. Maybe it was 1 year. It was the follow up to Spite by Old Flings. And we were just very locked in what was going on because we knew them. We're friends with those people. We're friends with, the labels who put the stuff out with Bitter Melody and Self-Aware Records. And we always said at the time, we were like, they should have just used all those songs for an album. Just made an album instead of doing like 4 splits. And that was what we were listening to at the time. We were listening to Old Flings. We were, doing that, still going to see them live around that time. So I was like, well, we've never done Spite on the show. So that would be weird to do just like all of their split EPs as one post, and I don't even know how you would do that. You would just call it the 4 splits or something like that. But honestly, that's the thing that was the most exciting to me that year, in the year of 2013, and 12 years later, it's still the most exciting thing to me. So, but I didn't.
Yeah, I think more than wanting to listen to very many of the records that came out from this time period, I am nostalgic for being part of a scene to a small degree, and like going to shows like that and being online in a very different way.
Yeah.
And still feeling like the internet is a place. And I did a bunch of tweets about this because I just had this like stream of consciousness kind of like thought process through like what the experience of being in a band and playing music and like being in a music scene in 2013 was like, in like the early 2010s and the early smartphone era. And it's just like you're like posting these shitty pictures. Like the phone cameras we had were barely better than the phone cameras you had on a flip phone.
Yeah.
But it was like on a screen. So like you had this like nice LED screen. So like it just was like bigger.
Yeah.
And just like, the internet was 2 things. It was like Facebook and Twitter and Tumblr, three things, and Instagram, sort of.
But was like start,
Instagram was just like you posted bad pictures of your food,
or
your cat, or something you saw at the thrift store. It's the stuff you used to put. This is the stuff you put on your Instagram stories. Now was just your grid post. It was just like it was Wild West. Like we were just blasting the worst content because we weren't thinking of everything as content. And like being in a band and like having a Facebook page, it was just like that was your band's social media. You didn't have band Instagram accounts. You had Bandcamp, and you sent WinRAR links to blogs, and you had event pages on Facebook, and you just invited everybody in every band, invited everybody they knew to every show. And that's how you promoted. That was the extent of it. It'd be like 2 posts.
And it worked.
And it worked. Because there was still like, I think there was still like a mystery to it. And there was still a very human social aspect to it. And social media now is just like content generation. And it's like making mini music videos. And like nobody gives a shit. Like,
and rage content. Like that's the other, Yeah, I've heard people say this before, that the internet was a better place when it was just something that you had to go to a computer and use and just do it in front of a computer, instead of the way we do it now, where we're just like blasting ourselves in the face with every thought that every person is possibly thinking, and politically.
When we first got smartphones and we had now like very portable internet accessibility, it was... you were still using your phone like a phone.
Yeah.
So like everything, you might have been on Facebook on your phone or on Instagram on your phone, but you were still using it to directly reach specific people or small groups of people. And you weren't just posting to the general masses and hoping that an algorithm shows your stuff to the right people within the first hour of posting it. I don't know. I hate to be an old man who yells at clouds, but like, it really was better.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I love the ability to be able to have a map on my phone at all times, but we had that in 2013, or music on your phone. Like we could do that then too. And
I don't want to go back to file management.
No.
I'm sorry. I know there's many issues with streaming, but it's so much better than moving stuff from your computer to your phone.
It's awful. Yeah, doing that now is horrible. You ever try and move a file from your phone to your computer now?
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, you can.
Yeah.
It sucks.
I would do that for a while. When I would get a new phone, I'd move all the pictures to my computer. And now it's like, you know what? Fuck it. Google's an awful company, but they got all my pictures. So they haven't lost them yet.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, let's get into what we did actually choose to talk about. So it was my turn to choose, and I had the year 2013, and I selected Wheels by Bars of Gold. Stats on the band. From Detroit, Michigan. They formed in 2009, and they are what are they? They're a post-hardcore / art punk / indie punk band. We could talk more about what they are, what they sound like later. But this was released October 29th, 2013 on Belly Ache Records. This is the band's second full-length album, and the personnel is Ben Audette on guitar, Brandon Moss on drums and percussion, Mark Paffey on guitar and vocals, Nick Jones on bass and guitar, Scott Ilionelli, apologies, Iulianelli, on guitar, bass, and keys. And we have some additional musicians here, Loretta and Julie Lucas from the Sisters Lucas providing backing vocals, and the album was produced by Bars of Gold, as well as Chris Colte.
So why did you pick this one?
I don't know. No. So when I was thinking about like my options, my 4 that I had initially picked to talk about, I didn't actually really want to talk about the Radiator Hospital. And the Comadre we eliminated for good reason. And the Melt Banana, I was like, I'd like to do it, but I think I just wanted to do it because it was something different that we hadn't done in a while. And so I was like, out of these 4 records, the record I love the most is this one. So, well, maybe the Comadre, but...
Yeah, I mean, that Comadre record is great, and I would not mind talking about it. Like,
yeah,
of these 4 records, those are the 2 that I would have enjoyed talking about more.
I also feel like the last time I was given the year 2013, I probably nominated the same Radiator Hospital and Comadre records to potentially talk about. So, yeah, I don't know. For some reason, I wasn't really connected with most of it, and so I was just thinking, I was like, I do like Bars of Gold a lot. So it's one of those bands that I'm just like, we haven't done it as an album on the show. We haven't done Bear vs. Shark on the show, which is funny too. We've talked about them, and we used them in like a 100-100. We mentioned them anytime we run across them, but we haven't done one of their albums as the main topic. And I still would like to do one of those at some point. They have 2 records to choose from, so it's very easy. But I was like, I don't know. I mean, it might be the thing that I just look at that list now, and that's the thing that I would probably be more inclined to listen to on my own, just based on whatever mood I was in at the moment. So I think that's why I went with the Bars of Gold. I was like, I like that record a lot. It's probably their most concise album. I don't know. And I just thought there was something there maybe to talk about. I don't know. The story itself, I was like, I don't know if there's a story here, but thankfully I found enough to kind of, squeak out a story here. Yeah, this is a weird year. It's kind of choosing from the 2010s is often like this. It's very like, do I want to? And I feel like we should. And that's why we do it. Because there is good stuff during this time period, but I don't know. It feels a little harder to dig at. You have to like find something that you feel like talking about. What is your experience with the band Bars of Gold?
So you and I pretty much got in on the ground floor with them. I think we heard the first single from their first album, which I think was The Hustle, was the name of that song.
Was that the single?
And I remember being so excited for that record coming out. Just being stoked, because it was like, we both had gotten into Bear vs. Shark way too late. They were done. They'd been done for a few years. And we found out about them. We kind of knew who they were, but didn't really know what they sounded like. And so we got really into Bear vs. Shark. Like, this is an incredible band. It's 2 perfect records. Like, can't believe we missed out on this band. So then, 2 of the members of Bear vs. Shark starting a new band were like, hell yeah, this is going to be good. And it was. I loved that first record. It was definitely one of my favorite records that came out the year it came out. And I very distinctly remember looking forward to this record when I found out it was coming out and was just eagerly awaiting it. So really had gotten into Bars of Gold pretty much immediately.
There was like a live...
As early as anyone could.
Remember there was like a live recording too that I think might have actually come out before the LP.
I think there was a live clip from before the first album that we saw, and then the single. Yeah. Yeah,
I mean, I'm pretty much in the same boat when it comes to that. I think we found them at the same time. They got... the press was going on about them a little bit, and we were, the big Bear vs. Shark fans that we're just like, hell yeah, let's check this out. I do remember there being a very big adjustment period for this band, though, because while it's like, it's 2 of the members of Bear vs. Shark, they were the singer and the drummer, and, well, I guess Mark played guitar in Bear vs. Shark too, but what they were playing was very different from what Bear vs. Shark were playing. Bear vs. Shark were like post-hardcore, very much of the moment, that late 90s, early 2000s, post-hardcore, screamo scene. Those were very tightly, close scenes, but they also had that orgcore element to their sound as well, so you could play them, but, between Hot Water Music and like City of Caterpillar, and it would not feel jarring to have them kind of in that place. So Bars of Gold, when we first got that first record, started listening to it, it was like a very different kind of thing. It was like more post-punky, more dynamic, sparse as well. Lots of other instruments that Bear vs. Shark didn't use. The energy wasn't quite the same. Bear vs. Shark had a much more high energy feel, and Bars of Gold was a little slower. So there was an adjustment period there. It took me a minute to kind of like get to where they were as a band. Like, I understood what Mark was doing and Brandon were doing, and I enjoyed it, but it was definitely like, I still held Bear vs. Shark on a higher level than Bars of Gold, which I still do. Yeah,
Bars of Gold was doing a little more of this, like a jazzy math rock thing, which comes from the rest of the members being from a band called Wildcatting, which I don't think I ever listened to.
Yeah, I got a little bit on them too. All right, so I mentioned this earlier. What do we call this? I mean, post-hardcore is kind of where I'm sitting at, but it's...
Yeah, I would call it post-hardcore. Like, I think it's just post-hardcore in that broad, late Discord records.
Yeah,
way.
Fugazi is a big reference point whenever you like read reviews from around this time period talking about this band. And so, it is post-hardcore. That is definitely the main key. I guess it just has all these other elements of it that are not necessarily like the most punk, but they give it a lot of different texture. It is not like one thing. There are not a ton of like direct one-to-one comparisons either. To me, the biggest like one-to-one comparison is the band Constantines from Canada. Yeah. They're also doing the like post-hardcore sparse thing, arty post-hardcore.
I would say a band like Less Savvy Fav is a pretty good comparison.
Yeah, I saw that comparison too. Yeah.
I definitely hear like similarities to like Q and Not You and those kinds of bands too.
So this is the section where we talk about what else is going on in the same scene as them, but I don't even know what scene they are even in at this time.
Yeah. So the also-rans that I came up with are kind of all over the place, and it's mostly just the mathier stuff and the more frantic stuff. Pup put out their self-titled record, and to me, Pup are direct descendants from Bear vs. Shark.
Yeah.
That was immediately what attracted me to them. We wouldn't have heard it until 2014, because it came out in Canada first.
Yeah.
But yeah, Pup was just like, they're kind of like Bear vs. Shark. And that's like the one band that I could compare Pup to. And even then it was still like, sort of.
Yeah.
Was the qualifier.
Like, it was one Pup were like a little more straight ahead than Bear vs. Shark were. That's maybe the main thing. There's like a pop punk element to Pup that Bear vs. Shark didn't have.
There's a Diarrhea Planet record, I'm Rich Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. I feel like there's an atmosphere to that band that is pretty similar to the Bars of Gold, Bear vs. Shark thing. More of a stretch, but like 1994 and Native had records that year. Bands that sound like the Constantines. Pretty much brings to mind Restorations. So their second album came out that year. Similar thing, I think. More on the atmospheric.
Yeah. The dynamics are very much similar.
Yeah. And you have the gruff vocalist.
Yeah.
Whereas, I think a band like Restorations maybe leans more towards like a Yo La Tango, a little bit slower core influence. But yeah, otherwise, I don't know. It's kind of a stretch. Like, there's a Foles record, This Town Needs Guns. Superchunk put out I Hate Music. I feel like that appeals to a similar listener.
Yeah. Even if they don't really sound that much alike.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're a weird band. They're really kind of hard to kind of narrow down. I always kind of felt like this is where Bear vs. Shark would have eventually gotten to. If you listen to stuff on Terrorhawk, like the softer moments on that album, I definitely am like, yeah, this is probably where they would have wound up if they just stayed a band and continued on. Especially if Mark is like the main songwriter in both bands. So, yeah. Well, also in that year, in 2013, Bellyache Records released albums by the bands Duende, The Mugs, Betty Cooper, Destroy This Place, which features our friend Ryan Allen, Nice Hooves, which was a band that features members of The Armed, as well as Genghis Tron, Voyager, The Oscillating Fan Club, which has a member of Wildcatting that was not in Bars of Gold. We also have Hit Society, The Amino Acids, and Slasher Dave. I don't think I've heard of any of these bands before. So I don't know what Bellyache Records is or where they came from, but
yeah,
it's a Detroit label. It was interesting to see Ryan Allen's name in there and the Armed guys being in there too.
Yeah, I don't know anything that Bellyache put out.
Yeah.
They were on Friction Records prior.
Yeah, for the previous album.
I guess I'd be curious to see what they put out in 2013.
I will say Bellyache prior to this year released stuff by the Gorgor Girls and as well as Ryan Allen and His Extra Arms. So like the first like Ryan Allen solo record I think is on there too. So Bellyache just feels like a Detroit label.
Yeah.
Well, let's do this.
Friction did anything in 2013. So
I wonder if Friction ceased to be.
Yeah.
Well, let's do the story. So, the members of Bars of Gold are rooted in friendships that began over 20 years prior, growing up together in Highland, Michigan, which is a town 30 minutes outside of Detroit. Lead singer and guitarist Mark Paffey and drummer Brandon Moss played together in the early 2000s post-hardcore band Bear vs. Shark, and after years of non-stop touring, Bear vs. Shark called it quits. Brandon Moss then went on to form the instrumental band Wildcatting with the musicians Ben Audette, Nick Jones, and Scott Ulanelli. And they released one album. It was a self-released album, How to Survive a Sneak Attack, in 2007. And then they invited Mark Paffey to join the band as a vocalist. And evolved into Bars of Gold. So they start this instrumental band. It's kind of like Bear vs. Shark, but if they were like instrumental and jazzier, they like some jazz times. And you kind of feel a little bit of that on this record as well, too, with Bars of Gold. But basically, they start a new band and they're like, we want to add a singer. And they're like, okay, let's change the name too. So Bars of Gold released their debut album Of Gold in 2010 on Friction Records. And following that record, drummer Brandon Moss was informed that he would be moving to Washington, D.C. for work. So they do the record, they put it out, it's kind of a hit, they have a tour booked, and then their drummer's like, I gotta move. So this put the band in kind of a weird spot. So he has moved to Washington, D.C., and this kind of put the band in this we have to write as fast as we can mode, because they didn't want to call it quits. They wanted to stay a band, but they also knew they had limited time with Brandon going to DC. So basically what they would do is it's just like anytime they could be together, they would do as much as they possibly could. So they didn't have a regular practice space at this time either. So they couldn't even really like jam. They had just lost that as well. And so it was like finding somewhere to rehearse and write together. They just hopped from basement to basement. Like whoever had an open basement that week, that's where they were. Moss had moved to Washington, D.C., but they would then practice over Skype. And I have no idea how they would even do that with the latency issues with Skype. I don't know. I don't know how you do that. I feel like that would be a horrible way to practice.
Yeah, that would be a mess.
Yeah. And so like Brandon Moss would come back to Detroit occasionally, and anytime he was around, they would be like, let's write a song. Let's write a song right now. And so they basically, like, every time they were together, it was like, we are intentionally trying to write at every moment that we get, which was different for them because they like to take their time. They like to write leisurely and just like jam on stuff a while and then be like, oh, let's write something. And then they would write something. But this was just a case of our time is limited. We have to make the most of every opportunity that we can and use it. So after they would record all their practices, they would have hours and hours of tape, and then all the members would go home and work on those, listen to those tapes and work on stuff on their own. And while all the writing was done in like these quick bursts, they did take a long time to do it because you couldn't really do anything until your drummer's really around. So Brandon Moss does wind up moving back to Detroit in 2012, which is probably the same time that they recorded most of this record. They went to High Bias Recordings in Detroit, Michigan to record with Chris Colte. He had previously worked with the bands My Morning Jacket, the Dirt Bombs, and Akron Family. And then he would later go on to work with The Armed, Proto Martyr, and Umdu Mokhtar. They recorded the album with Colte in 4 days at his home, which was his studio. This comprised the majority of the recording session, but they do say that they wound up recording some extra parts in a shack in Pennsylvania, in the woods, run by a generator. So they just like rented this cabin in Pennsylvania. I think this is when he was still working in DC, and then they would go, they went there and recorded some stuff together, which is also where the song Coffee with Pele came from, because there was a cat who just appeared one day while they were at this recording studio cabin situation in the woods, and he would show up every single morning with them, and they would feed him hot dogs because that's all they really had to give him to eat. But he was clearly hungry, and they named him Pele. Everybody thought it was a song about the soccer player Pele, but it's not. It's about the cat that they met at the recording studio. And then, the album cover was designed by Mark Paffey, and it looks like different colored strips of like construction paper kind of like layered on top of each other. It's not a bad little cover. It does kind of catch your eye. It's not like it's not going to wow you, but it does look nice. It's got a nice look to it. So this definitely looks like cut out and glued together artwork though. But all right. That is like the main story with this one. There's not a ton of story there. And honestly, if we didn't have the story of him moving and then coming back, there'd be even less to talk about. I tried to figure out the timeline. I couldn't exactly narrow down when the Pennsylvania cabin recording happened. Some interviews made it sound like that happened when they were still separate from him, and then others made it sound like they did it after they recorded the record with the Colte guy. So, I don't know. Timing's always weird on interviews like that, which is how I had to find most of my information about this band, because there's not a ton of, like, bios or stuff written about them. So, all right. Thoughts on Wheels?
So, I loved this record then. I think I've said this before with Bars of Gold records. They kind of just always put out a record right in time. And it was like, Loved that first record. I spent a ton of time with it. And by the time I was getting to where it's like, all right, I've listened to this record a lot. Here comes the new one. And so I did the same thing with Wheels. I listened to this one a ton. And then just like as it was, petering out, running out of steam, of just like, I'm not going back to this as much because I've heard it so many times recently. Their third record came out. So like, and it's been a long time. They haven't put out a new one, but because they've been doing Bear vs. Shark reunions. But like I said, I was so excited for this record to come out. I remember prior to this record coming out, they had done these live performances, I think, of 2 songs, maybe 1 song. I think there were 2 that they filmed in a hot dog shop in Detroit, I guess. And it's like a famous old hot dog place.
What's up with Detroit people and hot dogs? Because they feeding the cats hot dogs. They got the hot dog stand thing they're recording at. Tim Robinson's from Detroit. He's obsessed with hot dogs. I don't know.
So I remember watching that video so many times. Just, it's this live clip of them playing in the restaurant, and there's just people in the restaurant, like ordering their food, eating their hot dogs, and they're just set up in there playing, and it's super casual, and it's like way underproduced. They're just like moving the camera around, maybe a couple different cameras, and it's live audio. They just played the song in the shop, and there's just like, it ends with kind of like, this like half-hearted kind of applause from the people that are in the restaurant. I loved that kind of stuff back then. I remember I used to see, there was always like the couch session, different people that would do like the pink couch, I think was one of them, or there was another one where they would just like set up a camera and film a band playing. Like there were clips of like Dan Sartain just playing outside of a venue, just like dimly lit, and like there's a video of AJJ playing in like a bathroom doing a Neil Young cover.
There's another one of them like playing on a bus too.
Yeah, they did that on the Metro, the light rail in Phoenix, where they just like got on, played Heart Elation, filmed it, and then got off.
Yeah, fucked up in the bathroom at MTV.
Yeah, we had so much content like that. It was just like you could finally do it. Like it was cheap enough that people could do it. Yeah, easy enough to do it.
Now it'd be like, what the fuck? Stop! If you saw that happen now.
Now it's just TikToks. I mean, it's But like, so I remember hearing those couple of songs. There was like 2 songs that are on this record that they played in that performance, and I was so excited for this record to come out. It's been a long time since I've re-listened to this one specifically. Like I said, I kind of just moved on to the next one. So I haven't really listened to any Bars of Gold records in quite a while, but still remember this record very well. Like, kind of note for note. I was really obsessed with it.
Yeah, it's, when I listened back to it, I was like, man, I remember this record really well. There was like very little on the album that I was kind of like, what's this? I don't remember this at all. No, I remember like every single song on this album. I guess I just listened to it a ton as well, too. And I guess it's one of those things where like we just kind of like egged each other on in our listening at the time. That would happen occasionally. So yeah, I remember this record really well when I put it on. I was thinking maybe there'd be some stuff I wouldn't recognize, but no, I recognized like everything. So very, I must have listened to it a lot after it came out too, instead of just that one year. Unlike the third one, Shelters, when it came out, I think I listened to it a ton the year it came out, but not so much after that. So you're right, though. It is a case of like, oh, the new one's out. That's the one you kind of focused on after that. But yeah, pandemic, Bear vs. Shark reunions, that kind of took away some of the attention off of this band. I remember listening to an interview with Mark. It was probably after Wheels. Yeah, it was after Wheels, but before the next Bars of Gold record. And he was talking about how, we're gonna do another Bars of Gold record. We got to finish that one, and then I'm having kids, so they like planned it. And then he was like, if we do Bear vs. Shark, it'll be like, if we do new music with Bear vs. Shark, it'll be after, the kids are born and a little bit more grown up. Which probably explains why we're seeing more shows from them. At this stage, I don't know if I need to hear new Bear vs. Shark. I don't know if it'll be the same. But if it sounds like Bars of Gold, it should be fine. So I guess that's kind of where I stand with that. But
yeah, I would welcome it because I know we had 3 nearly perfect Bars of Gold records. So I feel like there's a chance that a Bear vs. Shark record will live up to at least that expectation.
Yeah. Yeah. Revisiting it, though, for me, I was like, okay, I remembered it way better than I thought I had. But then I was just also enjoying it a lot. I was like, man, this is a really good album. Like, it's just a really fun record to listen to. And, like, I don't know if this is the kind of record that I would actually like if it wasn't these musicians. I don't know. I guess that's hard to say exactly. But I had so much trust in them that I kind of was just along for the ride. I mean, I guess I probably would have liked it if it was just a completely different set of musicians, because I like the Constantines, and they are very much in the same vein. The dynamics, the singing and the quiet, loud element of their music, which, goes way back to the Pixies. And yeah, I was pleasantly surprised upon re-listen to like it still as much as I did when it originally came out.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It's fun, smart music.
It does feel smart, right? Like, the Fugazi influence is pretty obvious, and Fugazi are a smart band and are well regarded critically. That is something interesting I did find about this, is that Bars of Gold also seem to be pretty well regarded. Like, they're not... I feel like this is the kind of record that if you read a review of it, there's a chance that the reviewer would have given it a bad rating just because it's... I don't know, because it's not Bear vs. Shark, and maybe the expectations would have been too high, but...
Yeah, I mean, I think that Bars of Gold always had the Bear vs. Shark comparison. It's always on the tip of your tongue. It's like, if you're introducing it to someone, you're just going to say it's members of Bear vs. Shark. Like, it's kind of unavoidable. I feel like with Bars of Gold, there's a lot of the Bear vs. Shark sensibilities, but to me, it's kind of like how Jets to Brazil is its own thing.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Like, it is very easy for me to listen to these Bars of Gold records without actually thinking about Bear vs. Shark. I mean, I know we've mentioned Bear vs. Shark so many times. That's just because it's part of the story.
Yeah.
But, like, if you made this... If it wasn't the same people, you might make the comparison.
I think Mark Paffy's vocals make you think of Bear vs. Shark.
Yeah, that's the main thing.
You're just like, oh, it's that guy. It'd be hard to listen to this if you're familiar with that band and not think of Bear vs. Shark. But as far as like the instrumentation and everything else goes, very different sounding band.
Yeah, you have lots of like clean guitars and echo pedals, and like there's a lot of similarities to like a Don Cab Battles kind of math rock thing in the guitar playing. But I think there's also kind of a Wire and a Television kind of arty early post-punk thing. Definitely a Talking Heads influence. But even then, like, I feel like you can roll in kind of like a Springsteen kind of earnest rocker thing and like 90s indie rock, Discord. I don't know. I can pinpoint so many likely influences when I listen to this record, when I listen to this band. And there's just all of these things that come together in this really unique package. And it's really inspirational to me, like in more ways than Bear vs. Shark was. That like Bars of Gold to me represented a way of putting together kind of like everything you like in one band and not being fixated on genre or limiting yourself and saying, oh, we can't do that, that's too much of a post-punk thing, or we can't do that, that's too much of a heartland rock thing. Like, you can just do them both, and, like, it works.
Yeah, that's why I was having such a hard time kind of, like, narrowing down, like, the specific genre it is, because it's kind of not just one genre. And it's also not it's not a case of, like, this is our heartland punk song, this is our Fugazi song, this is our new wave song. It's just a case of just like, I like that instrument. I like how it's used and played. That's what we're going to do for this song.
Yeah.
And it's just bringing in the disparate pieces that fit where they need to go.
Yeah, you have like Talking Heads bass lines and Yola Tango atmospheric guitars and shouty punk vocals.
There are I almost feel like this is almost worth just breaking down, like, the instruments more so, and like just discussing what the performers are doing more than just like trying to even just like breaking the songs down or trying to figure out genres. But like the vocals on this record are phenomenal. Like Mark Paffey is one of my all-time favorite singers in like general, and then like especially in like punk and hardcore type stuff, because he did this like mixture of like he could croon, he could do some of like that kind of singing, which I think that comes from the Motown influence of being Detroiters, you know, growing up in Michigan and having Motown being just so ever present in their lives. That was an influence on their sound. I get a little bit of that in his voice, but the way he also then erupts on those vocals, like his shouted, like punky yelling kind of vocals, some of the best ever. I love the texture of his voice. He's doing a kind of vocal style that was very popular at the time. It was very Hot Water Music style vocal, Small Brown Bike, you know, a lot of that kind of stuff, that overdriven, yelly kind of singing, but like not doing hardcore voice. But there's something about the way he does it that manages to maintain a lot of melody, where a lot of his contemporaries don't. It's just kind of just like yelling.
Yeah. Mark's always been able to just ride that line of practically shrieking.
Yeah.
But what it is I think early on he figured out how to take the way that your voice sounds and projects when you're yelling across a crowded space. Like the way he sings, "Hey kids!" It's like you drop your larynx, you open your ribs, and it's just like you're not trying to control it so much, so you get a little fry, but you're projecting, and you're just like trying to be heard and able to be understood. Like you're not just like wah, you know, screaming, shrieking, but you're just yelling to get somebody's attention. And he turned that into like singing soul.
Yeah. I mean, he is the standout for sure on this record. He is one of the guitar players as well. This is a 3-guitar band.
When I saw them, they had 4 guitars.
Well, that's because they added a 4th guitarist.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'll say this: they were told maybe you should drop a guitarist and just be a 2-guitar band, and they said no and added a 4th guitarist, which is very funny. The 3 guitarists being specifically Mark, Ben, Audette, and Scott. But Nick Jones also plays guitar on the record. I don't think he was their live guitarist, but because he's their bassist. But I think it's just a case of like everybody plays everything. And also, I kind of pulled some of these credits, who plays what, from the Equalvision website for the next record, because I could not find any credits on who played what. They just listed them as performers, so I took those instruments and then applied them. So maybe Nick didn't actually play any guitar on this record, but he is credited as a guitarist at some point. But guitar-wise, does it sound like there are 3 guitarists here?
There's a lot of doubling.
Yeah.
There's a lot of, which gives it this really like harmonized kind of Thin Lizzy-ish quality on some of the riffs, which I think is really cool.
Yeah. Those to me are like the most standout like guitar parts, are those specific moments. Like songs like Coffee with Pele has a great guitar intro. There's the one song that's the Tree Fort has like just this like wild guitar intro, but then like doesn't really repeat throughout the song. Blue Lightning has another strong guitar part. Connected. Yeah.
There's just a lot of interesting kind of like, not quite polyrhythmic, but you'll have like guitars doing sort of a lead part, but then you also have a guitar doing just like a completely muted, like chuck, 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 just kind of rhythmic percussive thing. There's a lot of funk. I feel like there's a lot of funk and ska and new wave guitar influences and a lot of math rock. And like the guitars are just so adventurous on this record and pulling from so many different places.
I mean, the guitars are doing a lot of that the more atmospheric elements of their sound too. Like a lot of those like almost soundscapes are mostly guitar driven. So lots of pedals and like effects and stuff like that. I mean, I guess that's where would have like 3 guitarists would be really handy, as you can have like the ones doing the more like atmospheric kind of noodly type stuff. But then you also have like your big riff guys and your smaller, cleaner channel riffs. And I want to say when I saw Bars of Gold, it was after Of Gold, but before Wheels. And like, I think Mark even brought out like a banjo on that. Cause I think
there
that
was
record,
one song they used a banjo on.
Yeah. And I don't think Mark played guitar on every song. They were like an instrument swap band too, I noticed. It was just like, oh, you're swapping out guitars, you're swapping out who's playing what. So yeah, there's a lot going on. It's a very like collective kind of approach to songwriting, which is really cool. And then the rhythm sections are both phenomenal. Like Brandon Moss is the drummer. He's such a good drummer. You could tell he has like some real ass training on there. Like the jazzy elements are there. Knows when to not cover up too much. There's like one song on here where like it's like a faster part of a song, and he's just really only doing the one drum on the snare. Like he's not like doing too much. He's just not overfilling it. He's not putting in all these extra parts. So like he's someone who can really, really figure out when and where to play. There's some stuff where he's like, I'm gonna go crazy on the toms on this one, but the next one will be like I'm mainly hit on the hi-hats on this one for a good chunk of the song. And then like the bass work is just fantastic. Lots of like post-punk bass work, a little bit of dubbing bass in there too. Really just great bass work. I guess there's some ska reggae bass in there that that'd be the dub stuff, but I guess that would be like a Fugazi tie, because they were doing that kind of thing too. Everybody's great on here. Like there's no weak element to me of this album. No artist, no member of this band feels like a weak link to me.
Yeah. It's a lot of people doing a lot of things, but being smart and considerate and not playing over each other, and not like knowing how to leave enough space for somebody else to have an idea. So you have this almost like ratcheting kind of rhythm of just like tick, 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 of just like this hits, this hits, this hits. And like each instrument hits in a different spot on the beat. And like, it's really impressive timing, and they can do it live. So like, it's not just we edited it all together in the studio. Like I saw them live and it was the same thing. It was like they pull it off. So like really good sense of timing, but not feeling clinical either.
Yeah, you mentioned like there's a math rock element to it, and you're right, but it doesn't feel like a math rock record. Those feel very like, and here's the part where this comes in. It's just like that does feel slightly more clinical and a little bit more planned. This
is like a really high level jam.
Yeah, but it doesn't feel like a jam either. It's like, Fugazi sometimes feels like a jam.
Yeah. It's not a lot of your first instinct guitar parts. Like it's not a lot of just your typical, there's no blues licks on here. There's well written, thought out melodic ideas happening, or just like interesting rhythmic ideas happening. And like, I think that's where there's like a genuine jazz influence. It's not just, I feel like a lot of times people will say something is jazzy and they either mean it swings or they mean it's very technical. And this record has a lot of like a 70s jazz funk kind of groove going, and everybody is just working towards the same goal, but standing apart from each other. And it feels thoughtful, but still somewhat off the cuff, rehearsed, but not edited.
Yeah, I do think that the way that they wrote for this record really helped. It kind of really reined them in and gave them like a focus to be like, all right, we got to finish a song here now, because we won't be able to if we to finish this for another 3-4 months if we don't. So
yeah, we got to have something to take home and work on too.
Yeah. And it helps. They're all like just great musicians. Like everybody plays so well together. Mark might be like technically the most limited of the guitar players, but I don't know.
He's mostly playing parts that he can sing and play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then sometimes he doesn't play anything and just sings only, which shows it tends to be like the more high energy tracks, and
yeah,
the ones that, where he can run around. Cause he like, even though this band is mood wise, I would say is a calmer band than Bear vs. Shark, he would still pull out that like live energy. Cause he's a very energetic live performer and just like a phenomenal showman. So yeah, he would even do that in Bars of Gold.
Yeah. And so many of the moodier songs, though, still build up to this big break. And just a very, very cathartic moments on this record. They don't feel melodramatic. It doesn't feel like, like a screamo band of being like, we got to build up to this big emotional break. Like, they're not working you over. They're like singing about their jobs.
Yeah. Well, let's do a little bit of the wrap up there. The aftermath. They would go on to invite a fourth guitarist into the band. They would bring in Mark Peffey's and Brandon Moss's Bear vs. Shark bandmate, John Gaviglio, to play in the band, and they would release one more record, Shelters, in 2019 on Equal Vision Records. Equal Vision also reissued Of Gold and Wheels in 2018 as well. And that's kind of where their story ends. They put that record out. I guess I could go look and see what Bars of Gold is doing today as far as a live band is concerned, but they haven't released anything else since 2019. Bear vs. Shark has reunited. This year, I think, is the year they've probably done the most with Bear vs. Shark, with their show. They did like a tour, kind of. It wasn't like a normal tour, but and it was the Terror Hawk like 20th anniversary show is what they were doing. Would love to have seen one of those. They have not posted any shows since, let's see, 2022. They did a show with Signals Midwest. It was the Dent record release show for Signals Midwest, and those are like Pittsburgh and Ohio shows, so I don't even know really where those fit in, but no other shows that I can see that Bars of Gold have done, because Bear vs. Shark kind of became the priority, and pandemic too, halted a lot of things, but yeah, so not a ton. They've played some shows since their last record, but not a lot. So I'd be curious to see what winds up happening with this project. If Bear vs. Shark becomes a priority again, I could see this one just being done and set to the side, and we may never get another Bars of Gold record, but I hope not. I hope we do get more Bars of Gold, because it does offer something different. Yeah,
Bear vs. Shark is touring this year. Terror Hawk 20th anniversary shows. They did some earlier this year. They have a few more at the end of the year. I have a ticket for their LA show.
That's right. Because they also played Best Friends Forever, right?
Yeah.
Which, yeah, was a good looking lineup, but I didn't hear too much about it afterwards.
I saw a lot of clips of performances from that, some different bands. Everybody looks lethargic.
Daytime shows, though. Like, it's outside, were those in LA, or those Vegas, right? So
those are Vegas.
It's still warm there too. Every Vegas show looks the same too. I think they all use the same like venue, because when we were young, like you see clips from when we were young, they look identical. It's like, what festival is this? Oh, it's the other emo festival.
Yeah, one is some when we were young festival clips too.
Yeah, outdoor festivals just doesn't work for me. But I have come around on outdoor shows, I guess, but I would really only do that for big bands that I'm not going to be able to see in a smaller club. But, well, did we win?
Yeah, this record holds up.
Yeah,
super
I think so
well.
Too. Let's do a rating. I'm giving it a 4.0. I think that's where I'm at.
I would give it about a 4.5.
Yeah, that feels about right. Yeah. If anyone is interested, I did include a link in the show notes. So if you're in that $5 tier, that you also get access to show notes that I publish. Sometimes I forget to publish them, but I publish them all, but sometimes I forget to publish them weekly. So you'll occasionally get one where it's just like, here's 3 in one post. But I have a link to the review that you wrote for the Figureheads of Pop when this album came out. And I read.
It's okay.
I thought it was a good review. I mean, it's a very positive review. You were clearly a fan of the record writing it, so it has a different feel to it. But
I read it again too, and there's so much about my writing style that is different now. I was really determined to write the longest sentences possible.
See, I am a run-on sentence guy too. I don't know where to make the stop at.
I'm so much more just like cut it off. Like now than I was then. I was just like, sure, this is not even a complete sentence, period.
All right. Well, I think that will do it for us. So thank you all so much for listening, and we appreciate all of you. You can follow us on all forms of social media at PunkLottoPod. We have a voicemail line, 202-688-PUNK, where you can call us and leave us a message that we'll play on the show. I got a few more of those left to play. Didn't quite have time to pull one out for this episode, but we've got a few more there in the bank. And then, or you can send a voice message directly to our email if you want to do it that way. Just a voice memo. Where do we follow you online, Dylan?
You can find me at Husker Dylan or Major Awards Band. I'm going to try not to be on the internet so much for the rest of the year. So, but you can find me there. I'll get bored eventually.
Yeah, you'll get messages, you'll get ats, you'll get all that stuff. So if you want to talk to him, he'll see it. And yeah, I'm online too. I don't really post a ton myself. It just feels bad to scroll a lot these days. So I don't really, especially since watching the news is such a big part of my job. But yeah, so thank you. Thank you so much for listening, and we will talk to you next time.
To order Punk, call the number on your screen. Rush delivery is available. Remember, this special offer is not sold in stores.